everybody. My name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, as most of you know, we've done a lot of shows, and we've had, extraordinary guests who come in from all over the world to share their gifts of love and their gifts of wisdom and their gifts of understanding with us. And we have, right from the very beginning, we have, a similar set of themes that we've talked about in one way or another on every show. We talked about the experience of the connection, of oneness, of the lack of separation. We talk about how a human being can experience that true love, that what people throughout history have called God, what all the teachers and masters and goddesses and have come in with that knowledge and with that experience to show the world that it's possible and that they too can have that experience. As Jesus said, that you too one day will have the experience I have and even greater. And, hopefully now is the time for that. Now is the time for that experience to be real for us more and more and more on a more consistent basis. And then one of the other themes we talk about quite often is, how do we get to where we are in some ways? How do we treat each other and treat the environment and the trees and the dolphins and the whales with such disdain and impunity? What do we do as humans? How do we go? I was with a friend at a coffee house, and we saw these two beautiful kids. And he said to me, isn't it amazing that that kid with so much love and so much light in their being can 10 years from now, 12 years from now, 15 years from now, be strapping bombs to themselves and going with as many nails and bolts and devices that tear apart the human flesh and go to the places that are most populated with the enemy and blow themselves up, take their own lives and as many as possible of other lives. And how do we get to the place where people of that age or maybe a little older get in airplanes and either following orders or making orders or however you would look at it, dropping 5,000-pound bombs? Anonymously, in a sense, not blowing themselves up, not being part of the carnage in a way, but being part of the carnage except, 20,000, 30,000 feet in the air. How do we humans go from that incredible child of light, into that experience of, I want to strap a bomb to myself, I need to, out of duty, out of country, out of patriotism, out of my God telling me that, out of what needs to be done for the holy life, the afterlife. How do we do that? How do we get there? How do we get there from here? It seems an extraordinary jump in 10 or 12 or 15, 20 human years. And if you think about it, how do we go there? What level of hate, what level of experience of that our own body, that our own physical form is in a sense worthless, or the only thing worth about it is to take out as many of the enemy. I mean, what is our identification with country, with religion, with God, with color, with race, with nationality, with all the things we identify with that make us do things like that? And, that's not even to get into how we treat the oceans and the dolphins and the whales and the trees. Do we treat them with the dignity and respect and the balance of us all on this extraordinary planet? Do we do that? And, a lot of times, if you look around, the answer is no. Do we value the air we breathe even? Do we value what the trees and the rainforests do for us as human beings, the synchronicity between us all, the connection between us all? And you look around and you have to say, no, we're missing something. We're short somewhere. We're not understanding the whole. And throughout history, that's why the Jesuses, the Krishnas, the Buddhas, the Mohammeds, all the roots of the religions, because people were having an experience of something, came into this world, and more and more, and many more than those, came in and said, no, you have to know that love, that inner oneness. God, it was called. And each religion has their own God, their better God, their more loving God, their clearer God, their more conscious God. I mean, Leslie wrote a song that we've shown on the show, Isn't There Enough God to Go Around? And you would think so. You would think there's enough God to go around, but obviously not. There's not enough land, there's not enough patriotism, there's not enough oil, there's not enough money, but there is. What we are missing is that connection to the love. And when I was reading about tonight's guest, Samuel Oliner, it was just amazing. I mean, we all know of the stories of the Holocaust, of the, the German Holocaust and the Jews. I mean, it goes on in Yugoslavia, it goes on ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's not like it's the only time this happened, certainly. But it happened to such an extent and so procedural and regimented and clear with a pattern. And this Samuel Oliner has an amazing story of survival in this. I mean, this man at 12 years old was carted with his entire family into one of the ghettos in Germany and Poland, and was there for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden they started rounding up all the people in this ghetto. They were torn out of their homes to move to this ghetto. All their possessions, everything. Just, you're separate from me. You're not worthy. How often we hear that. And in that particular case, so the Germans did that to the Jews. And they took all these people and put them in this ghetto. And then after a certain amount of time, they started rounding them up from this ghetto and moving them. And this Samuel Oliner's stepmother said, get out of here. You can try to get out of here. Bad things are going to happen. This is not a good thing that's happening here. And the result of what the Germans are doing at this particular time is going to result in tremendous pain and suffering. In their heads, obviously, for good reason, for something worthy. So Samuel ran away. And the story of him hiding, the story of him eluding this death, and then to hear that his entire family, mother, father, his brothers and sisters, were all taken to this giant pit with planks over it, long planks. And they make the Jews walk across the planks and then machine gun them, and then they fall into the graves, these big pits. And then they walk more on. And then some of the people didn't die, but they got buried and crushed under their brothers and sisters, their mothers and fathers. How do we get there? How do we get there? And then this other side. So here's this 12-year-old kid running away. No money, no food, no weapons, nothing. And he came across this family, and particularly this woman, who taught him how to not act like a Jew, how to learn to say what you say in a church. And she advised him to do this and that, and she risked her own life because people who were protecting the Jews at that time were also killed. Because they were beneath the Germans. There's always somebody's beneath and somebody's above, because we don't know the connection. So here's a 12-year-old boy finding out his parents were machine gunned down. Into this pit. And how does he make a life for himself? And the story of what Samuel Oliner's done, with the grace of this woman who said, you have to tell the story, you have to know that. So his whole life has been in studying what creates good, how to forgive, how to have compassion for those who've done the most horrendous things to you. I mean, it is such an amazing and inspiring story. It's incomprehensible in a way that we do these things to each other. But we do, and we do, and we do, and we do over and over and over again. And he's just studied what happens that makes this evil happen, such a separation, such a hate, such a righteousness that to kill, to maim, to torture, to strap bombs to ourselves with nails and bolts, to drop 500 pounds or 5,000 or 5 million. I can never remember. It's so large a bomb that when they announce that this is the bomb that was dropped here or there, I can never fathom it. So the numbers go in and just rattle. I think at 5,000. I mean, can you imagine a 5,000-pound bomb dropping with the technology that exists today to create as much damage as possible, drop from 20 or 30,000 feet or however far they drop them? Can you imagine? And we do it. We all do it. Not we, one country, not we. The hate manifests. So if the countries don't have the 5,000-pound bombs and they have 2,000-pound bombs, they'll drop those. If people don't have anything, then they'll strap bombs to themselves. What are we doing? And Samuel's life has been dedicated to recognizing that love within us. He's written 2 books. He's written many books, and the 2 that really struck me was Towards a Caring Society, and his latest one that's an extraordinary book, Do Unto Others, a novel kind of idea. I mean, do we want, obviously we've talked about this before. I mean, don't we want to treat others as we want to be treated? I mean, clearly that's what we want. I mean, would we want it? Would we want to look up and see a 5,000-pound bomb coming? Would we want to walk into a coffee shop and see somebody blowing us up? Would we want to, but, how can we know that? And, the subtitles of those books are Do Unto Others, Extraordinary Acts of Ordinary People, and How Altruism Inspires True Acts of Courage. The courage to hide a Jew in Nazi Germany, to take your own life and risk it. And how many times we see that in 911 all over, everywhere. But how do we get the other side? How can we not be in that place where that hate is so strong? So Samuel's going to be here tonight. And then we have two beautiful videos. We're not sure we'll have time to show them both. Actually, they're still being worked on. We just got them, these beautiful music videos with the artwork by Bill Niedow and the music by Michael Mastley. They're magnificent videos. So, I mean, anybody watching the show, whenever you're watching it, I mean, hopefully, if you watch it a minute from now, a week from now, that epiphany, that realization will happen to all of us here on earth by some miracle. But if it hasn't, and we still need to work at it, I mean, isn't it time we recognize the insanity of it, the stupidity of it, the absolute destruction that we are doing to ourselves, our beautiful planet, and each other, just by our definitions of things, but really, people say to me sometimes, they call up after watching a show and, we talk for a while and they say, well, what do you think, how can we deal with all the problems? And, obviously there are enormous numbers of problems. There's just incredible problems on this earth of how to deal with this thing or that thing. And I say, to me, if we could work on, instead of each leaf, instead of healing a leaf, somehow heal the root, which is the heart. And how do we heal the heart? How can we get into the root of the one problem on this earth, which is that we feel separate from love. We feel separate from the Creator. And how can we do that? How can we reach into ourselves? And isn't that, in essence, what all the spiritual paths are about? Always have been. And theoretically, what all the religions were about. Not that theirs was the best religion, but how can we go to the love that's for us all and is us all and is the love. The love is the love. And there's not a separation in that love. There's not a country in that love. There's not a real religion in the love. All the religions came from that love at the root. The masters had it, the founders had it, and they said, love your brother as yourself. And in every religion, that's the root of it, love. Love is the question and love is the answer. And how do we miss it? How do we keep missing it? And that's, you know, in essence, how we need to proceed in this life, is to find that answer. We want to know that answer. We need to know that answer. And we know that there's something more in our lives than all the separation we see. How can it be that we go through this life and we feel separate from each other, the dolphins, the whales, the trees, that we have a little group that we identify with it? A state, a country, a religion. I mean, my parents, I was, you know, born Jewish. My parents are Jewish. And my parents say to me, you know, don't you recognize you're Jewish? Don't you know you're Jewish? Of course, it's a joke. I say, no, why didn't somebody tell me all this time? And goes over very big with them. But what I say to them is, at some point in my life, the experience of something other, which is bigger, which takes in being Jewish, which takes in being a Christian, which takes in being a Buddhist or a Muslim. It takes in. It's bigger. It's more vast. It was real to me. It was more real that I was born in America, that I am, by my driver's license, by my passport, an American. I mean, if I had a passport from California, I mean, that, you know, I live in California. Am I a Californian? I have a gray jacket on. Am I a gray jacketarian? I mean, at some point it becomes silly. And yet we take on the truth of these others. And the question really is why? And, you know, actually it's interesting because, you know, I've been talking and talking. And, you know, most people who've seen the show before say, you know, does he actually have a guest tonight? I mean, you know, he's been talking. This is the longest opening I've ever heard. And it's been interesting because, you know, this has been an extremely unusual day that way, that, you know, just things have been almost like a little off or a little askew. And Samuel, who was supposed to be, he lives in Humboldt County. We shoot the show in Santa Barbara. And he was supposed to be here at 2:30. And then this flight got canceled. This flight got canceled. This flight got bumped. This flight happened. And he's coming in, you know, he's on his way from the airport. And for us, I mean, the effort he put in to get here, to do this show live, because most of you know we do it live, and then we make tapes that go out to all the other cities, you know, the other 50 cities, but we do it live in, you know, the Central California area, the Southern California area. And when we're doing it here, it's going out live over the air. And he made so much effort to do that, that we said, you know, whatever amount of time, whenever he gets here, he's coming on. So I think we have gotten the word that he's coming, you know, he's on his way from the airport. He should be here in a few minutes. But his life, you'll see. I mean, you'll see. I mean, I read his book, and I spoke to him a number of times on the phone. I mean, his life is a real testimony to what forgiveness is, what understanding is, what effort is, what grace is. And we all want more of those. I mean, who of us doesn't? I mean, who of us would rather feel hate to anything or anybody? Who of us would rather feel disdain for the oceans or the mountains or the trees or the rainforest than feel the connection, than feel the love of their vibration, of their energetic force, of their beauty? Who wouldn't rather? Who wouldn't rather feel like everyone's their brother and sister rather than just this little niche over here, this American niche, this Californian niche, this gray jacket niche, this Jewish niche, this Muslim niche? Who wouldn't rather feel that we're all the same love, that we're all part of that energy? Who wouldn't rather feel that? Now, I guarantee you, anyone who's felt it for a minute knows it feels better. It feels lighter, it feels more joyous, It feels more connected. It feels more beautiful. And really, that's what we want. Again and again and again, that's what we want. And that's why we keep doing the shows. And that's why people like Samuel Oliner spend their whole day making every effort to be here to share with you their story and their connection. Okay, so why don't we do a short meditation, then we're going to have a little video, and then Samuel's going to be with us. He's in the studio. He's being mic'd up right now. So join me in a short meditation. You should be very honored that he's here. Okay, so now we're going to have the first video. It's by Bill Neidow, and he did the artwork and the animation. It's truly extraordinary. As I said, it was just done last week, and we just got it today, and we just got it ready for the show. And the music is done by Michael Masley on a cymbalon, which is a modern Hungarian version of the Hamid dulcimer. So whenever we're ready, it's called Kubricks Tube. Kubricks Tube. on the set with Samuel, so here we are. So, I introduced you because, I told him about the flights and all that. So, I mean, your life has really been devoted to, like, finding out how we can be in love, how can we be in courage, and how, feel the connection between us all rather than the hates and the separations. Sure. Why don't you talk about that a little?
Well, all my academic life, I've been interested in two topics. I've been teaching in this area, and I've been writing in this area. That is the nature of evil, and the nature of goodness, because I've experienced both personally. I've experienced goodness, compassion, and caring by this Balbina, this woman who saved my life that you mentioned while I was on the plane. And the other one, so she showed goodness. The evil was, that you also have explained, is the genocide, the mass killing and murder of my entire family. And so these two forms of human behavior have motivated my entire academic life. And so rather than staying bitter and hating, I think it's, well, because hate is self-destructive. Hate and unforgiveness really hurts you. You're not the person who hurts you. So you have to think in terms of forgiving people. You have to recognize their humanity. Otherwise, you will, without recognizing their humanity and expressing empathy, you can never forgive. So in a sense, this is what I have been coping with and writing and talking and teaching about, that the world is I divide the world into well, I've divided the European world first into 4 categories, and that sort of also that guided my academic life. The 4 categories are one of them is obviously killers, murderers, and bigots and collaborators, the victimizers. Another group, which by the way was not that great, it was primarily the Nazis and others, and then, racists in this country and so forth. Another group is obviously the victims. These may be Jews, gypsies, gay people, and so forth. But the saddest group of all, by far the saddest, is the bystanders. And then, of course, you have the wonderful human beings called the rescuers. So I think that still is sort of true for the rest of the world. Excuse me. We have a lot of bystanders, and the issue is, or the actual effort that is worth putting forth on all of our, all of us, I should say, whether we are teachers or pulpits, people at the pulpits, and priests and ministers, is how do we move more individuals, these bystanders, to that of carers. And so that's what I've been trying to do with my teachings. I have been introduced a course which is probably the most popular course at Humboldt State University, namely
after marijuana.
Yeah, that's the most important.
Right,
marijuana.
Humboldt is the
capital of marijuana.
Right.
But
the second,
the second most important course, because marijuana is not a course.
Right. No, that's
a happening.
Lifestyle. Right.
It's a happening.
Right.
But the course I introduced was, and it's the only one in universities that I know of, at least in the California State University system, is the Sociology of Altruism, Love, and Compassion. And people are really, right. If we offer 3 sections, 4 sections, it would fill. But unfortunately we can't because of financial budgets and so forth. So there is this, I feel in my being that there is people are tired of violence and alienation in a world without spirituality, a world without caring, a world of looking out for me and myself and I, and I think that it is not an impossible task to be able to teach to influence through love, compassion, and example more people from the role of bystanders and indifference. You know, that's one of the things that sort of reminds me of. I know that you've heard of Elie Wiesel, a Nobel Peace Prize winner who was also in the camps, Auschwitz and Buchenwald. He said that his greatest problem that he sees today is indifference. The opposite of war, the opposite of war, the opposite of all of the beauty and so forth, is that we are indifferent to it. We don't recognize beauty. We don't care about war. So the indifference is the real enemy. And I feel the same thing. That I think that the rest of my life, being an elder person now, I'd like to continue devoting to that of caring and compassion. And also, right now I'm doing research on forgiveness. You mentioned it. And I think forgiveness is extremely important. I think there are two, there are two processes, positive human processes, that are most important today. One of them is altruism.
Define it the way you would talk
I'll
about it.
define altruism helping someone who is in need of help, who will benefit from such help. It is voluntary on the helper's part, for which you're not expecting any external reward. It doesn't mean anything about, it doesn't say anything, it doesn't address anything about internal reward, external reward. In other words, so that when I look at Baldina, my rescuer, and I look at some of the other heroes in Do Unto Others, I see these people have done it totally out of caring, putting the welfare of another one alongside of their own, and sometimes, unfortunately, in front of their own. I'll tell you a quick story about that issue, how important this altruism, and the examples of this are very important. I've got hundreds of examples to accumulate when we interviewed rescuers. And we've interviewed bona fide rescuers in Poland, in France, Germany, Italy, Holland, Denmark, and even Norway, and some rescuers that moved to this country and
Yeah, two-hand drinker.
thank you. Who have moved to this country in Canada. And I can tell you a couple of stories that I've, about the idea of rescue and caring, compassion. But I'll give you, one of the examples I'll give you is the following. A woman in Poland, in Krakow, which I just visited 2 months ago with my son. Woman in Krakow, a Catholic Polish lady, was standing on the sidewalk, and she saw a group of Jews marching, being marched by the Nazis to the Umschlagplatz, which means to the place from which they were transshipped to their death. And one Jewish mother held this little tiny baby in her arms, and I think I reported this in the book here probably. She was out doing unto other. She knew that something terrible was going to happen to her child. She rushed over to that woman on the sidewalk and says, "Please, please, lady, I beg you, save my child." Well, this woman took this child. She was Nordic looking, typically not Italian or Jewish or whatever, Nordic looking. And she was neither married nor was she pregnant. She took the child to the home, and some evil inclination, some evil people would reported to the local police, the Polish police, which were in the service of the Nazis. Well, the Polish police arrested her with a child. She was taken to the Polish police station, and she was sitting there waiting for the captain to come in. And captain comes in, he sits in front of the desk, and she's holding this baby, and he says to her, "This is not your child, is it? This is a Jewish child, isn't it? Do you know the crime for having a Jewish child?" As if by divine inspiration or by sign of, inspiration, probably is the best word. She burst out into tears and she banged on the table. The captain Stanley said, "You should be ashamed of yourself, Captain. You call yourself Poles. You call yourself gentlemen. There's one of the policemen sitting around in this room, I'm not going to point at which one, who's the father of this child, but he's so vicious, he's willing to label his child Jewish rather than own out his paternity, own his paternity." Well, point is, this woman had such courage. She was able to lie in order to save her life. She was able to lie. And so the captain sort of cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and let the woman keep her child. We had the privilege of interviewing both the woman and the child, who was no longer a child. So this is really altruism. This is really heroism. This is putting the welfare of others. This is risking your life. And in the forgiveness, another story I can tell you about forgiveness I'm currently working on is, as I said, I believe, I started saying before that two processes are very important. One's altruism, the other one's forgiveness. I just want to re-emphasize that. So that's what I'm into right now. And to give you a quick example of that, I interviewed a group of nuns in Kentucky, 3 separate communities of nuns, and I interviewed in great depth and so forth. They decided to apologize. Well, first of all, they're living in convents that were built by slaves. They go into churches that were built by black slaves. There's even a cathedral built by slaves. So they decided, because the Pope has apologized to various people in various venues, they, as Catholics, Catholic people, they decided to apologize to these 3 communities. So it was like I don't know what's the right word. It was like a 5 handkerchief scenario, lots of tears, you know. They met about 500 people, blacks and whites, and the nuns, and they apologized profusely for slavery. And black people, leaders, ministers, forgave them. And it was, as I said, this 5 handkerchief event, prayers and hugging and kissing and crying and tears. But also, what followed from that is good stuff, namely that they formed committees, joint committees, interracial committees to fight racism in Kentucky, on jobs, in various places, and also
would probably be pretty busy too.
Yeah. And they also established some funds in order to help poor students.
Can you see anything? What leads someone to be altruistic and leads somebody not to be? How does it work? I mean, you know, if we're going to change that or open the door to that, I mean, it's interesting because the opening, which was a little longer than usual today, I was talking about what makes, a 3-year-old kid 12 years later strap bombs to themselves with, nails and bolts and stuff and go to Starbucks and blow up as many people as possible. Sure. What makes a society drop 5,000? How do we go from the 3-year-old where there is no separation? So you've studied your whole life there. How do you get there? So
I don't claim to be an expert, but
it's a tricky subject.
It's a tricky subject. Well, you're asking a very profound question that's been asked for by thousands and hundreds of people. How do you become a carer, an altruist, compassionate person versus how do you become a hater, a killer, a KKK person, a Nazi person?
We want to settle it in the next 20 minutes, so go ahead. We're going to get to the bottom of this right now.
We will, huh? Okay, well, at least we'll give it a try, but we'll never get to the bottom of this. No, I know that you know. I would say this, that well, first of all, there are twin studies that have been made by psychologists, and just to give you an example, you can have identical twins, you know that, I'm sure. Identical twins, bring one up in a loving, caring, respectful home, and this twin will be a loving, caring person most of the time. I mean, doesn't mean no guarantees, but most of the time, given that there's no genetic damage or something, or emotional damage to begin with. Then take the other twin and bring it up in an abusive, father
Racist.
beating up mother and so forth and so on, violence, abusive, non-respect, no love, just discipline and punching and kicking. You know,
good things generally don't happen out of that.
No, not too many.
Right, that's a tough one.
Not too many. However, you know, there's also a beginning. There's also. So I would say the social cultural background, the environmental, the culture in which the home in which you're in. But then, little by little now, psychologists, especially neuropsychologists, are beginning to think that maybe there's a gene for kindness and compassion.
Wow.
I don't know. It's not been isolated yet, and so
some people have and others don't. Or
that's right. That
some
people may have more of they may have a gene which gives them a predisposition for kindness and compassion and empathy. But that's yet to come. But still, I'm hanging my hat on right now on the social, cultural, environmental, socialization experiences that you have, so that a loving home, a loving environment, a spiritual environment, is very important in my view. That's how a person is more likely. We always use statistics. More likely to be a compassionate and caring person.
And how did either we lose that or not have enough of it? I mean, where can we go now, starting at this moment, to make that more real? Make that love more bubbly around.
There's a sociologist who's no longer around, a very famous Russian sociologist, Peter Sorokin, who has the same question as you do now. How do we manufacture love, compassion, caring for the other, neighborliness, responsibility for each other? And he, believe it or not, he felt, he's no longer with us, he felt that it's doable. Now, just like you do in schools and on the street or whatever, parents can teach bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, homophobia. You teach this stuff. A kid is not born to be a homophobe or a racist. You teach him this stuff. So similarly, you can teach altruism at home, says Sorokin, and I happen to agree with him so far, because the evidence is there. It is. I don't think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out, but the evidence is overwhelming that that we can, quote, manufacture it in schools, the way the teacher responds to students, the way the parents, the way churches, ministers, and rabbis and so forth, mosques, the way they preach from the pulpits. And that, I think, can bring this about. However, it's a tough thing to do, because I also interviewed a group of priests and ministers, and I found them to be, obviously, forgiveness has two bases, has two foundations. One of them is obviously a religious foundation. Judeo-Christian or any other religion does talk about forgiveness. Even Jesus Christ is a primary example of that. But then there's the psychological base of forgiveness. In other words, people are struggling with each other in marriages, in intergroup relations, so that psychologists begin to realize that this is something that we need to work on. So I think that religion and spirituality can help to see the connection between all living beings, and we all children of the same God. And also, I think that teachers and psychologists and so forth have to do something about human relations, and forgiveness is
It's interesting, because the last guest we had was this, I don't know if you've heard of this man, Michael Tamori. He started a lot of psychic institutes, very gifted psychic and healer and teacher. And he was hoping at this time to bring curriculums in the school where that kind of spirituality and that kind of love is not compressed or deflated or defeated, but to bring it in from an early age, or ignored.
This is one of the very good point that he made.
And so he's really trying to get it, I think, through first Montessori and Waldorf schools, but really broaden it out rather than just start one school with 18 kids or 50 kids.
Sure.
But get it as part of the curriculum.
Sure.
You know, but you have to have gifted people in every place. So.
Gifted teachers and gifted, especially visionary principals, because that's the big problem. It's caring, compassion, social responsibility is the missing component in our curriculum. The missing component in our curriculum. And
well, it's a missing component in our hearts, so it's hard
in our hearts.
It's hard for it to manifest.
Exactly, it's a missing component in our hearts and the way we live and the way we reason and the way we perceive things. And this whole business of selfishness is something that we need has to be counteracted. But also, I'm an optimist. I think that things are getting better. I mean, you can say, I don't know, what can you say? You can say that we took one step forward, 7, 8 steps backwards. Well, we've gained an eighth.
Right. Sometimes you got to take a few steps back to get a running start, as they say.
So for instance, I would say that an example of this 1/8 more people. There's over 120 million volunteers in this country. If they were paid, they would get, I don't know, this is a guesstimate, $300 billion. They're doing it for free. Volunteers. I'm sure that you have volunteers right here in the studio.
Right. Yeah. Everybody here is a volunteer.
Wonderful volunteers. I'm
thing.
sure. And that's why they're doing this. They're doing it because they care. And so that gives me a little bit of hope that people who are volunteer. For instance, we've interviewed a group of.
Bunch of folks.
I should use the proper language, but
you're on a classy show now. You got to.
Don't be surprised if I switch into Polish.
Well, I'd stop you there.
Yeah, you would.
After the third or fourth sentence, I was, oh my God, we're going bad here.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. We've interviewed a group of hospice volunteers. Now, I'm sure everyone in this studio and you particularly know what Hospice Volunteers is. It's one of the most wonderful things ever established by this beautiful woman, English woman called Cicely Saunders, who I met. There's now about 7,000 or 8,000 hospice centers around the country, not around the United States and other countries, not just the United States. And I started in England. And so we interviewed a group of actual hospice volunteers. And I wanted to find out which human being would be so, would be willing, would you be willing, would I be willing to sit with a dying person in his home on a regular basis, on a dependable basis, comfort him or her in the dying moments, and not only that, not only comfort the dying person, but also the living
family,
people,
right.
family. So there's some hope there. So again, I'm saying, how can we manufacture more? And I think that there's no one solution. What you're doing is a way of inspiring people to try to, in their own communities, in their own ways, try to think about how can we make a better world for ourselves? How can we bring about a more caring world? How can we fix it? And so I'm hopeful. I'm still I used to start off as a self-hating pessimist. When I was drafted into the Army, I came into this country in 1950, and the law at that time, we had the draft, as I'm sure you know.
I do know.
Yeah. And
I did everything I could not to be part of it, so I have some idea about it.
Yeah. So, but the law was if you're a new and legal immigrant, you have to defend your new country, and the reward for defending your new country,
citizenship,
quick citizenship. I got mine in Korea on the front line. So,
well, you've seen fire and you've seen rain, haven't you?
Yeah. Wow. So the self-hate was there in the military, at fights and so forth. And then I said to also hated German people, which was first of all an insanity because less than 10% of the German people were Nazis, and the rest of them are, sadly, however, the bystanders. The largest percentage. Hitler had 300 million people under his sovereignty, under his occupation, and the bulk of them were bystanders. A handful of human beings were these angels, these rescuers. So, the idea was that I lost my train of thought. You better help me.
You were just talking about, that you had hope for, that we were coming into this.
Yeah, the hatred, and so forth and so on. So I said to myself, hatred is self-destructive to me, and I started thinking about goodness. Was there anything else besides evil in the world? And started thinking about goodness. So I went back to interviewing. Our first major book is The Altruistic Personality. And we interviewed over 800, approximately 800 bona fide rescuers in Nazi-occupied Europe. And we saw these wonderful human beings. And I said to myself, and then I started thinking of my own rescuer, this wonderful woman, Balbina, and her son, and her family, risking her life for me. So I started thinking that, goodness is self-destructive. So,
hatred is self-destructive.
I mean, hatred is self-destructive.
Goodness is better.
Absolutely. That's my 14-hour plane ride.
No, I know. No, you hold it up really well considering the day you had.
Yeah,
I must say you're doing great.
I didn't know this plane is going to arrive today after 3 or 4 cancellations.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys. I mean, you and Deanna were like on the phone all day.
I know.
And she called me in between.
She is an angel. She was patient and so forth. And she had hope.
No,
faith.
She wanted you here. Yeah. She said you belong here tonight.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out how to get here. I pleaded and prayed, and there's no way. I thought I should have driven from Arcade. I would have been here faster.
Absolutely.
It's only 600 miles.
No, I know.
From my house to this place.
Right. Well, you're here now, so we're very excited.
We're happy.
So, I mean, you have hope, and you see that almost that shift happening, shifting away from the separation into the experience of love and oneness. Because at the opening, I was saying, until we really have that experience, that what happens to you is the same as happening to me. That's the root of all true religions, or that's what the masters had. That spirituality. So you see, I mean, we do. I mean, because from the show we get incredible people from all over the world coming in saying, in our travels, we see that, and in your lectures and books and interviews, you're seeing that too, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, moral examples exist. People who speak on this program have something very important to say. Your show has something very important to say. And I think there are journals being published in that area, I'm sure you know there's a dozen or 2 journals that are being published about spirituality and caring and tolerance. And this, one of the problems that I have with religion per se is, I consider religion has two types of Christianities, one with a capital C, one with a small c. There's 2 types of Judaism, one with a capital J and a small j. The small j is Judaism. We go to church or to synagogue, I guess. They pray and then they go out and hate blacks,
everybody else, right?
Blacks or the Schwarze or whatever. Right. That's the kind of Judaism the same with Christianity.
Christianity. It's the root. The root of all the religions is what we want. I'll tell you, I'm going to come to the end of the show. Well, you got to come back. I mean, we'll drive you. We'll get you down here the day before, so we'll have a day to do it.
I'm very, very happy.
It was a real honor to have you.
It was a wonderful experience for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So, any information about Samuel Allen, 805-687-2053, 805-687-2053. His book is Do Unto Others. It's available everywhere. It's available on Amazon. Go to the Bridging site. You can get it through there.
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, Borders, it's everywhere. It's a beautiful book. It tells stories about love, and that's what Samuel's about, and that's what we're about. We love you. Good night. God bless you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.